I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CQM and 980 CGME. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. Hopefully you had yourself a great week. Brr is the only thing I have to say. Brr, brr, brr. Old man winter. Yes. Well, hopefully you had yourself a good week, regardless of what some of those temperatures were out there this week. Today on the show, we really got a great program for you. We're going to hear from Todd Lewis. He is a farmer from Saskatchewan, from Gray, Saskatchewan, and he was named by Prime Minister Trudeau as a new senator. So we're going to talk to him and wish him the best of congratulations from everybody here in the RealAg on the Weekend audience, as well as RealAgriculture.com. We're also going to hear from the Minister of Trade and Export Development, Warren Kaeding, with Saskatchewan. And then we've got Pierre Petelle from CropLife Canada to talk about kind of an urgent ask by CropLife Canada to PMRA to stop their transformation agenda. What's that all about? If you have any feedback, you can send us an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can, of course, call the RealAg feedback line at 855-776-6147. Okay, as promised, Prime Minister Trudeau is he has announced that he is resigning, but on his way out, he is going to appoint some vacant senator seats. And interestingly enough, something that's been on the program here quite often is on that list of 3 that were announced last week. A farmer from Gray, Saskatchewan, Todd Lewis, also a member of the executive with the CFA. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
Very well, Shaun.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Yeah, it is an honor. Tell us about how'd you find out?
Well, there's a interview process and application process as well. So I put an application in a couple of years ago, and really nothing came of it. And really over the last 2 weeks, I was given a phone call if I was still interested in the application, and I said yes. And from there, it really accelerated, and really this has come together over the last couple of weeks. And I'm surprised as anybody, to tell you the truth.
Who told you that you were going to be appointed? Did the Prime Minister himself call you?
Yes, yeah, there's an interview process you do with the PMO. There's people within. Well, I guess they're not part of the PMO. They're actually the independent Senate board, and we did a really in-depth interview with a couple of people from Ottawa. And shortly after that, the phone rang. It was the Prime Minister, and asked me if I would accept the appointment. And
you were sort of like, yes, or like were you kind of stunned?
Well, I think, once we got the interview process, I thought there was a pretty good chance, but really the way it worked out, the interview was at 1:00, and that very afternoon the call came. So it like I say, it was really accelerated, and I must have done pretty good on the interview because it didn't take long that the phone call came. So it was it was very unexpected, and as I say, a great honor and very humbling as well.
So in that interview, what are some of the things they asked you?
Oh, a lot of things about your past, for instance, and
well, that's checkered. That's whoa, like
past media interviews and so on. So hopefully, we'll get through okay, Shaun. But,
exactly.
But no, and just things you would think about is would there be anything embarrassing in your social media presence, those kind of things, right? They just want to ensure that you won't have something that could come up later on and embarrass the office and the Senate.
Okay, so you're busy with being on the executive of CFA. You're one of the vice presidents. You've had a big history with APAS as well, being involved in farm organizations. You're still farming.
Yes.
Now the Senate, this is going to be a lot to juggle.
You're right. And, really it's, with the Senate, it's something that'll take me away from, I love farming. I love my farm. I love working with my family. the province of Saskatchewan, my local community, very heavily involved, and this will take away from that, and I'll still be able to farm some, and we'll be involved with the farm, but we'll have to hire somebody to probably sit on the air drill a little bit more at seeding time and the combine in the fall. But at the same time, this is such an opportunity and such a great challenge that I just couldn't pass it up.
So curious, Todd, you said you sent an application in a couple of years ago. What pushed you to do that? What's the why here? On initially, obviously now you're going to be in the Senate, but initially, what was the driver to potentially be a senator?
Well, I think we've been underrepresented, over the history of the Senate, and we have Mary Robinson from PEI and Rob Block from Ontario are both have close to agricultural ties, and they've done a great job. But Western Canada, I felt, was underrepresented, and also with the minority parliament, we've heard more about the Senate in recent times than really have for a long time before that previously, and with the minority parliament, there's been lots of bills go back and forth between the Senate and the House of Commons, and I thought having a bigger agricultural voice at the Senate would be helpful, and I hope it does turn out that way.
You got used to the name Senator Lewis yet?
Not at all. No. It's actually, I'm in Ottawa this morning and for the event, like you said, at FCC, and we'll be at the Senate this afternoon. So it's taken some getting used to, and I'm sure I'll hear lots of it this morning at the FCC event. And it certainly is something I certainly never was had in my plan, or I said to my brother, I said, I never really looked to become a frequent flyer, let alone a senator.
Well,
and here we are.
Yeah, you're going to find out how much fun it is to fly from Regina to Ottawa.
I'm already well aware of that. Yes, it's not much fun.
It is not good. It is not good. Regina to a lot of places is difficult. Regina to Ottawa is another thing.
That's right.
For sure. I guess, is there anything in particular about as you're about to do the intake and begin the I guess the training or sort of the educational process of the intake here today? Is there anything you're kind of nervous about or kind of have sort of like anticipation about?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I think any preconceived notions I have about the Senate will be quickly proven wrong, like with most things. And no, it's a big learning curve, and the culture within the Senate is, amongst the other senators, I've had dozens literally reach out and welcome me to the Senate and offer their help, and so it's a very welcoming place, and certainly the staffing and so on is geared towards helping people like myself, new senators, adapt as quickly as possible. So I think if I have issues or any day help, there's been lots offered, and I'll certainly look forward to working with the 5 other senators from Saskatchewan and as well as the rest of the colleagues within the Senate.
What have you been hearing from some of your farming peers?
Well, I think generally, everybody's pretty excited that there's another voice for agriculture in the Senate, and I know. Not only the people in Western Canada, but across Canada, the different people involved in different commissions and so on, and with my involvement with boards and groups in the past. So
you can hear my full conversation with Todd Lewis by checking out RealAg Radio podcast from Tuesday or at RealAgriculture.com. And once again, a big congratulations to Grey Saskatchewan farmer Todd Lewis for being named to the Canadian Senate. We've got more RealAg of the Weekend coming up. We'll be talking to the Trade Minister for Saskatchewan right after this. If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters, and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
For balanced nutrition with micronutrients, the best answer is Wolftrax DDP from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how Wolftrax can ensure nutrient availability through a crop's growth cycle, visit wolftrax.ca.
Lots happening in the trade arena. One of the provinces that is definitely very much keeping its eye on what is happening, not only globally from a trade perspective, but some of the challenges that Canada has with the United States right now is the province of Saskatchewan. And joining us right now is the Minister of Trade and Export Development. It is Mr. Warren Kaeding. Warren, how are we doing?
Hi, Shaun. Well, it's early in the morning, and so far, so good.
Now, I believe you're off to Singapore later today. What's going on there?
Correct. Going to Vietnam, Singapore. We've got a few trade shows where there's kind of introducing Canada to Singapore. We've got a number of meetings set up with industry groups, with ag groups. So just again, selling Saskatchewan to Vietnam and to Singapore and the related areas.
Do you feel added pressure to add market access and improve trading relationship with some of these other countries, given what's happening between Canada and the U.S. right now?
Well, it's interesting with Saskatchewan. I mean, we're very much export dominated province here. And we're probably the least dependent on the U.S. right now. So we have done a significant amount of work in developing these markets outside of the U.S. I mean, don't get me wrong. The U.S. is a very, very valuable partner to us and certainly really appreciate the integration that we've got. But we have 9 trade offices around the world right now and definitely doing a lot of work with them. And we need to continue that. As we say, it's pedal to the metal and just making sure that we're introducing Saskatchewan to every opportunity we can around the world.
Yet, you look at some of the commodities, potash, canola, for example, very reliant on the U.S. market. We've been hearing about a real speed up in terms of potash shipments, for example, to the United States to get ahead of potential tariffs and the threat of them. Is that kind of trading activity something you've been hearing about from some of your constituents?
Yes, we have. We've actually heard about other commodities, oats, flax, yellow mustard, getting into position in time. Haven't heard much about live cattle because we have a significant integrated market with live cattle, but certainly in a lot of the commodities, we're hearing a bit of a ramp up, kind of the pre-tariff talk, and then in the reprieve as well, we're starting to hear more about some ramping up of inventories.
Bit of a double-edged sword there, in terms of, doesn't that just increase the trade deficit?
Yes, it does. And we're going to hate to see the numbers, I guess, at the end of the year as to what those monthly import-export numbers look like.
Okay, so this week we saw the premiers go to DC. I guess from your perspective as somebody that's focused in trade day in and day out for the province of Saskatchewan, what does the message, do you believe, need to be to some of our peers in the U.S.?
Well, the message we've certainly taken so far with elected officials, Premier's been doing a significant amount of work contacting governors and elected people in the various states, especially the key trading states that Saskatchewan does business with, to get the message down right down to the ground level, to the customer, the consumer, to the producer, as to what tariffs how they're going to affect them. We've all had the concerns in the last couple of years through, high inflation and affordability, and ultimately getting that message down to who is buying the product in the end, how this is going to affect them. You add 25% to an input, say like potash, and automatically could add an extra $4 to $6 per acre in an input cost in an already tight market.
One of the scenarios that has been put forth is, okay, so let's just pick on potash for a second. Okay, or really any resource or energy type product. There's a lot of talk, less of a tariff for those kinds of goods, or no, an exemption for those tariffs. Is Saskatchewan in favor of the mechanism of them putting on like an export tariff on those goods to get it to that full 25%, like all the other goods, to try to change some of the U.S. behavior? Or what's your position on that?
Well, our position really is tariffs are they're not going to help anyone, either side of the border. Tariffs or counter tariffs. I mean, that's really part of the discussion that Premier and ourselves have been having with all of the elected officials, stakeholder groups across the border, is that tariffs really do not benefit anyone. They just increase the cost on both sides. So whatever the input cost is going to be, or whatever the input is going to be, you add 25% to that, and ultimately it's the consumer that's going to lose, both sides of the border.
Right now, there's a lot of talk again, we've been here before, but there's a lot of talk again about interprovincial trade barriers and how we need to open up domestic trade within Canada. Not going to solve all of our problems. That's not replacing the U.S. market on most things that are exported. Is this a real thing, Mr. Kaeding, or is it all talk and a lack of action?
Well, with some jurisdictions, it certainly is a big thing. When the Canadian Free Trade Agreement was signed in 2017, Saskatchewan was one of 2 or 3 provinces that had the least amount of exceptions, the least amount of carve-outs in that Canadian Free Trade Agreement, which really supported the idea that we are open to trade here. I mean, we still have some issues. I know just last week we were working on, the direct-to-consumer sales of alcohol. Is there some opportunities that we can do to support that side of things? We know we have local abattoirs, so we'd love to be able to sell meat across the border into Manitoba or Alberta. Right now, we don't have, a similar regulatory process that allows our small abattoirs to be able to do business in those provinces. We're working towards trying to remove those and give them that opportunity. We have some regulatory issues. I live right by the Manitoba border. We have an oilseed crush plant just across the border. There's an issue with safeties, how farm vehicles are safetied in Manitoba versus Saskatchewan. So there's some regulatory issues that we also need to overcome that would enhance the free flow of goods back and forth across the border. So there's a number of small issues, regulatory issues, as well as some bigger trade issues that, yes, we need to get in front of. But I'd say, Shaun, the biggest concern we've got is the federal government has the largest amount of exceptions by far. And we need them to also lead by example and start removing a number of those exceptions that will allow that freer movement of goods and services across borders.
Now, to wrap up, just want to swing back to the trade mission you're about to go on into Vietnam and Singapore. What does a good outcome look like on a trip like this?
Well, on a trip like this, let's use a crop metaphor. We're planting the crop. We are planting the seeds of trade in Vietnam and Singapore and the areas that they also, have relationships there. So we're going to be talking to industry there to talk about some of the opportunities that, first of all, find out what they are looking for. What opportunities are they looking for in a trade initiative? What are they looking at? Food security, energy security. How can we help them achieve the goals that they've got for their countries? And then ultimately outline, how we believe we've got some of the food, fuel, fertilizer services that can support what they're trying to accomplish in their country. So we're planting the seeds, and then throughout the summer, we'll continue to nurture those relationships through our trade offices. And then, in a year or two's time, fully expect we'll have MOUs, we'll have, different agreements that we'll be able to facilitate. Or if nothing else, we've seen Company A get together with Company B here in Canada, and they've worked on a great trade agreement between them.
We've been talking to Warren Kaeding. He is the Minister of Trade and Export Development for the province of Saskatchewan. Minister Kaeding, thanks a lot for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Shaun. Thanks for your interest.
That was the Minister of Trade and Export Development in the province of Saskatchewan, Minister Warren Kaeding. We'll be back with more of RealAg on the weekend here on 650 CKOM and 980 CGME. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada. Just listening to the Minister of Trade from Saskatchewan, Minister Warren Kaeding. You know, a lot of those trips, it is a long tail, and I asked him about what does success really look like, and I know for whether it comes to farm organizations or government, you're having to constantly kind of, maybe defend some of those trips, but in times like this where there's such a struggle with the U.S. and trade going forward. This is where this hard work over a long stretch of time has a better chance to pay off. They're not starting from square one when it's talking to countries like Singapore and Vietnam. It's how do we build on what we've already started. So this is important work that the minister and others are doing. So best of luck to Minister Kaeding on his trip to Singapore and Vietnam here over the weekend. Joining me right now is the President and CEO of CropLife Canada, is Pierre Petelle. Pierre, it's great to chat with you again.
Nice to hear from you, Shaun.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to start first on what exactly is the process that PMRA is undergoing. It's the PMRA is currently going through, and it's been going on for a while, a transformation process. What exactly is this?
Yeah, so maybe just for listeners, PMRA is they're the ones who regulate pesticides in Canada. So nothing gets on the shelf until it's been approved and regulated by PMRA. They initiated this transformation agenda actually at the start of the last election, federal election. There was some media noise in Quebec primarily that got the attention of some ministers, and to sort of tamp it down during the election campaign, they promised a bunch of things with PMRA in terms of what they were going to do. And it created this transformation agenda post-election and change in senior leadership at the agency. And they have been forging ahead with this multi-pronged transformation agenda, which touches basically most aspects of how pesticides are approved.
Now, is this looking at, how they go about their business, or is this a strategic plan in terms of looking for different outcomes or a different role? Like, how transformative is this potentially? What is the outcome here?
Okay, I don't want to be too flippant, Shaun, but it's really trying to respond to the anti-pesticide NGO agenda by exploring all different criticisms that they've made of how pesticides are regulated and trying to appease that push. That's my honest assessment of what's happening.
I'm going to get to your concern here and some of the communication that CropLife Canada put out this week. But before I do that, is CropLife supportive of this process in general?
No, there's really nothing in here that would be beneficial to attract registrants, make sure registrants keep bringing new innovations to Canada, and therefore new technologies for growers. There was a couple of things in there in terms of that might have been an efficiency gain if it had been implemented properly, but those few policy ideas are not going in the direction that we would have supported.
Okay, so the communication this week was the PMRA needs to immediately pause transformation-related activities. Why send out the release now?
Well, they've been toiling with all of these different ideas and policies for, over 3 years now. And we've been involved on every working group, every consultation. We've provided very detailed submissions when asked. But what we're seeing is that we're just not making progress. And it seems like they're forging ahead with their almost initial ideas unchanged. And now what we're seeing is a bit of a rush to get things across the finish line before an election or change in government or whatever arbitrary deadline. But there seems to be this rush to get things across the finish line. And frankly, some of these things are still not fully baked. They haven't addressed many of our concerns. And in fact, we've participated on a few information sessions for all stakeholders, and they're not able to answer basic implementation questions. What will it mean for this? What will it mean for that? From small companies, large companies, our association, and those basic questions aren't being able to be answered. And so it kind of cements this notion that it's not ready. These things are not well thought out, and they're potentially very damaging to the attractiveness of Canada for our members. And that's what concerns me the most.
How does the pause of the transformation agenda at PMRA, how does that tie into some of the struggles or challenges Canada has right now with the current U.S. administration?
Yeah, so even before all of the attention was focused to the south of us, we were saying these policies could impact innovation, investment in Canada in the plant science space, which will impact Canadian agriculture. So we were saying this is already potentially damaging to business. And now you fast forward where everyone is seized with how do we deal with these potential tariffs? How do we look inward? We're even talking about interprovincial trade barriers and maybe coming down. I mean, I've heard that my whole career, but now everyone, senior officials in government, are all focused on how do we make Canada more competitive within our own borders, within things that are in our control. And you're hearing lots of business groups and governments saying, we've got to take down some of these regulatory barriers and burdens on industry to make Canadian business more competitive. And at the same time, you've got the PMRA toiling away as if they're in a soundproof room that have no awareness of what's happening around us with these tariffs, and saying, well, we're going to add this, and extra layers of bureaucracy.
Now, from CropLife's perspective, how does this potential direction that you see PMRA going with this process, how does that potentially impact farmers?
Well, we've got a president to the south of us that is saying, repatriate business, bring business to the U.S. We've got many companies in the agriculture space who basically just have a satellite, very, very little presence in Canada. There's a very satellite offices and that. But we also have a large number of our members that have a big presence in Canada, technical expertise, R&D, manufacturing facilities, and that serves the farmer. They're able to understand the needs of farmers. They're able to respond when there's an issue, a crop issue. There's technical experts, there's scientists here. That helps everybody in agriculture, especially the farmer. And what I want to make sure doesn't happen is that we hollow out that presence we have here and enjoy and benefit from, because you pile on all these regulatory burdens, and I didn't even mention the cost. They're proposing a major cost increase for members, where it would be more expensive to keep a product registered in Canada than it would in the US, which is a market at least 10 times bigger. So things like that are all these like disincentives that are potentially pushing companies to maybe change how they do business in Canada, or whether they do business in Canada, and that's why we're raising this alarm.
Yeah, if farmers do view the PMRA transformation as a negative impact on their farm businesses, we at RealAg Studies, the market research arm of RealAgriculture, we asked them about that about a year ago. It was before planting in 2024, and they identified this as one of the negative policies that could impact their farming operations. What about the confirmation this week of RFK Jr. and Make America Healthy Again? How does that potentially impact? There's an example where policies potentially driven outside of the country could actually impact Canada. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, maybe just to finish on your last point, the farm groups in at the national level have been extremely supportive as well. They understand the potential negative side of this transformation thing, and so we've had the Grain Growers of Canada and the Canada Grains Council and Canola, all the major farm groups have also raised these issues with the PMRA in terms of the direction they're going. Yeah, I mean the RFK issue and some of the things he said about whether it's oil seeds or crop protection products, GMOs, is pretty troubling. I mean, I've talked to my counterpart at CropLife America, and that's really where their focus is going to be, trying to make sure that the agriculture industry down there is a counterpoint to maybe some of the ideas he might have down there, and so we'll support them however we can. But I think even in Canada, on the international stage, PMRA, Health Canada, the government of Canada, I think will have an even more prominent role to play if the U.S. is retracting from a lot of these international tables. A lot of eyes will be on Canada to sort of be that voice of science and risk-based approach. And I think we've got to get our house in order to make sure that we can do that credibly.
I was just going to ask you, are we prepared for that responsibility? Are we as Canada ready to step up and take on that kind of a role?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the scientific capacity at PMRA, we don't bring into question, and we're always careful to say we're not. What we're talking about here is process and bureaucracy and red tape. We're not questioning the scientific capacity of the people who do the reviews. They're top-notch scientists, and we don't begrudge them one bit. So if we, the capacity is there to do that, to play that role on the international stage. The question is just whether there'll be the political will and whether Canada, the Canadian government, will see itself as having to play that role.
Yeah, great stuff, Pierre. Thanks a lot for joining us here today. Really appreciate it, and we'll follow up with you and talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity, Shaun.
We're going to take a quick break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg on the Weekend, here on 650 CQM and 980 CGME right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming. Combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology, MNP Ag Intellect delivers personalized solutions that empower you to make confident, data-driven decisions. Visit mnp.ca today.
It's been an incredibly hectic week here at Real Agriculture and in the general mainstream. Honestly, I know it sounds like a little bit like cliche, but honestly, between some of the political situation in Canada and its impact on agriculture and policy and just where Canada goes from here, and then you add the new Trump administration on top of it, which is like working in hyperdrive on so many different fronts, to be somebody in the agricultural news space right now, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And it's just, I'll tell you. And but I've really been loving getting out and talking to so many different producers. Been speaking across Canada and the U.S. Next week, I'm going to be in Kansas City at the Top Producer Summit. Looking forward to that. Going to be speaking to some of the top farmers in the United States. And I'm curious. I'm kind of curious because I give my presentation on Tuesday. Okay. So you're listening to me here on the weekend. Give me some input. What do you think the message needs to be? What do you think I should try to leave those American farmers with? There's a lot to chat about. There's obviously, from a Canadian perspective, there's about the benefits of trade. There's about the benefits of the integrated economy that we have. There's to talk about, how we've worked together on preventing diseases like ASF, how we're better off probably working together than we are alone. Yet, I'm curious what you think I should be talking about with, because I'll share it. I would love to have a bit of a collection here of here's what people have been saying to me in our audience. Here's what they wanted the message to you to be. So this is an opportunity for you to participate in the discussion. This is mainly going to be farmers throughout the Midwest, some of the top growers, large commercial growers, some of the top end when it comes to farm management, some of the benefit, some of the major producers, influential in their communities, influential with lawmakers. What do you think? What do you think the message needs to be to those farmers? I'm interested in what you have to say. You can send me an email at shaney@realagriculture.com. One of the things that we talked about at the RealAg Radio podcast on Friday, and, as I was down in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Farm Machinery Show, there was talk about the steel and aluminum tariffs for sure. Now, we have 3 waves of tariffs. We've got the threat of the 25% tariff on all goods that, Canada was supposed to face February 4th, but there's been a month delay. Then you have the steel and aluminum tariffs that were announced that aren't going in place until, I believe, the middle of March. And now we have reciprocal tariffs being talked about. Okay, so basically, if you have a tariff on a U.S. good, the U.S. is going to put the same amount of percentage on your product as well. So there's reciprocal. So here we sit. So it's kind of coming in waves. Now, the reality is that I'm curious where the Trump administration goes from here on this. Because at some point, people are going to sort of be like, I see what you're doing here. Like a lot of the narrative out of the U.S. has been, this is a negotiating tactic. But if countries sort of catch on here, they're going to be less inclined to give in if they think the probability of an implementation of a tariff is actually less likely than you're being led to believe. And so this is what the negotiation starts to look. We get a bit of a standoff, so to speak, when it comes to how countries react to the threats from President Trump. Now, on Friday's RealAg Radio podcast, we talked about, like, at some point in a marriage, when you're just kind of fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting, it's sort of like, let's just get that divorce. Why are we pretending for the sake of everybody? And I think for a lot of Canadians, that's kind of where they are with the U.S. relationship right now. They feel like they're a little bit beat up, a little bit underappreciated, take it for granted. That's why we talked to Minister Kaeding earlier about, Canada diversifying trade routes and things like that. So I think this is such an interesting time, and it's a moment in time. It's not forever. It's a moment in time and a bit of a crossroads for where the Canada-U.S. trading relationship goes from here. Now, if you have any feedback on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here for RealAg on the weekend. Make sure you go to realagriculture.com over the weekend, and we'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.